Hi, everybody. It's the CC and JT Amateur Hour, where production values go to die. And what we do here every couple of weeks is we invite a writer to come on and talk about their books, and their literary accomplishments. And every once in a while, we are lucky to get a writer who kind of fills up the space wherever she goes. Some of us live in reality. Some writers create their reality. And we have a fine example of a person who has created their reality in Priya Hutner. Priya Hutner is what I would say is a Renaissance person of the 21st century because her resume just goes boom, 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 boom. We could start just with the big one where a lot of us in the area know her as a community leader and a community activist for the literary community up here in northern Nevada and the Lake Tahoe area. If you here know anything about literary events, you've heard her name. But that's not all. Oh my gosh, no, that's not all. She is an accomplished chef. She is an accomplished business owner, and she has an award-winning book. So we say on this program, as we always say, it's our privilege to welcome somebody. In this instance, it really is a privilege to welcome and recognize Priya Hutner. Priya, I know I've taken a lot of your thunder, but why don't you go and tell us a little about yourself and tell us about your book?
Well, thank you both, and thank you for that amazing introduction. I My book came out in March, so it's fairly young, and the title is Chasing Nirvana: A Seeker's Story of Love, Loss, and Liberation. And it's my story of growing up in a cult-like spiritual community with a charismatic guru from Brooklyn. She was an outrage, and the my search for enlightenment and my devotion to waking up, and that was really important to me. I mean, it didn't always start that way. I would say I was very much a reluctant yogi, but I came in very young. My parents brought me in. So initially we moved to New York at an early age, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to go hang out in the city. You guys meditate. And so that journey from New York took my family moved to Florida, where Ma, the guru, established herself with an ashram, which is another word for a spiritual community. And I stayed in New York for many years, and then I got pregnant with my first son and ended up back in Florida. I did a little back and forth, and that's where the story kind of goes through this time period of, I would say, my personal life, my personal story, and then being devoted to this crazy Brooklyn guru, and what all the things that we undertook to be a practitioner. Hours of meditation and hours of yoga and chanting, and all in the name of, waking up and being more conscious. And so, and then it crashed. And so the book is about, kind of almost like how I got here, is that crash and burn to the very end, and the trauma, and rebuilding my life. Because when I came to Tahoe, I had no idea how to start over or what I would do. And Catherine Hill, who was running the Tahoe Weekly, which is now the Tahoe Guide, she gave me a job as the entertainment editor, and her food editor. And then people knew I was a cook and a vegetarian cook, and they wanted vegetarian food. So that kind of started the process of my private chef and catering business, the Seasoned Sage. And then we move into being here and all the things that you introduced me as an advocate for the literary arts.
So
So
let's
yeah.
talk about let's talk about this memoir thing for a second, because I think you don't know how lucky you are, and I mean that in a technical sense, because I attended a video conference with the Authors Guild, and these were all marketing agents, and they made a very interesting point about memoirs, that right now the griddle is hot for memoirs as long as they're written with the right tone and the right appeal.
Mm,
So your memoir, and if you have your book, do you have your book there? Can you hold it up?
of
Yeah.
course.
Yep. Let's
I
let's
don't
let's
have the sticker yet, but
okay. No, let's hold that up. So this award-winning book has gained recognition. This award-winning memoir. So what is it about you want to say the tone and experience of this book that has captured this attention during a time when memoirs are popular?
I think that my intention was a spiritual adventure story and a cautionary tale. I think the cult theme, it just hit right. It's always a fascinating topic for people who kind of like go, how'd you end up, that deep? And I think that when I started writing, I was really angry. I had been hurt, and betrayed by my teacher, my guru. She, basically, I ran, and then she just pushed, it was just the end was something out of a movie, just horrific. The accusations, and I think all of that led me to be, when I started writing the book, I just kind of like threw up everything on the page. It was just like I was excavating everything. And I sent some chapters to a friend, Arlo Guthrie, and because he was involved in the ashram, and he wrote me back and said, "You seem really angry." And I was like, "Yes, I am. I'm very angry." And so over the time, I had to put the book away because I had to make a living. And then I brought the book out when I felt ready to revisit it. And that's when I felt like I wanted to tell the story from another place. Not a place of anger, but a place of just, here it is. Here's my story. And, we pick and choose what stays and what leaves and what, what things work in the book. And I think that we created something that works in the book. And I feel really, I'm blown away by the reply and the responses and the reviews I've received. Like it's almost embarrassing, oh my God. But it's been the journey. It's been a journey in just not only, you think writing the book is the hardest part, but it's not. It's what are you going to take out? What are you going to put in? What about, when you write memoir, what about the other people? Are you going to change names? What about your family that still lives in the community? All those things were part of this journey in revising and going back to it and making it something that people would enjoy to read. I wanted it to read like a novel, but so here we are, I think we're 12 or 14 weeks out from publication, and things are just moving right along. And so it's been really, really exciting. I think memoir is hot because I think people, they're, many of us are voyeuristic. We want to see, dig into other people's lives and see how they healed or walk through their trauma or became who they are, or their resilience, and all of that is really has been part of this process for me. So
it sounds like you went through a lot in that writing process. So would you have any recommendations for anyone who wants to write a memoir, maybe with a difficult background? And like you said, what things do you decide to keep in? What do you decide to take out? Do you, all of the nuances of making sure that it's not only something enjoyable for the readers, but that you're basically, it sounds like you're doing your best not to hurt the people that you are also mentioning in your memoir.
That sometimes can't be avoided, can it? I mean, the truth is the truth, and people are everybody has their own perception or an opinion about, what is the truth. And I am telling my story, and I've got pushback. I definitely have gotten pushback. Some of the negative reviews, people posted nasty stuff on my Facebook page, and you're like, okay, but this is my story. And I think that I wanted to be vulnerable, and I wanted to tell the truth, but I wasn't, my mother is part of my story. I love her, and yet she's very much committed to the guru and that teaching. So there's this balance between that. And we didn't talk for a long time after I left. And so I would say, tell your story. You can always change names, but tell your story. I think that my advice is to walk your truth and follow your heart. It really is. And if there are bodies buried, and that person has to figure it out, whether they want to unearth them or not. And so that's important. And memoir is a hard genre. It is really a difficult genre to write in and get published in, I think. I think that it's a crowded field. But it's one of my favorite, I don't choose, I guess I've never chosen an easy path.
So let's talk about how the book changed you, because you kind of hinted at it. You kind of hinted at it when you said that you sent the manuscript to a former associate, and they said there was anger. And you set it aside, reopened it, then revisited the journey. What else did you learn about as you were writing this? Because there's there's probably things that you didn't put in the book about you, but what did you learn about you as a person as you were writing this? Because you spent hours holding up a mirror to yourself, whether you liked it or not.
It's true. It's true. I think I learned that there's still much to learn. There's still a lot of growth, and there's still, when you spend time, I guess, digging up, the pain and the trauma, you have to be able to be willing to look at yourself and see, how do you move forward with that? How do you help other people? I mean, to me, that's one of the most important things in this journey has been how many people I've met and how many people have said, wow, your story related to me in ways that I never imagined. And that's a gift. That's a gift to be able to help other people. And, I've learned that there are lots of people out there, myself included, that, the world is crazy. And how do we hold our truth and ourselves in this world during this time and be true to ourselves and our heart? And so I try to, I've always felt like I was a kind person and a good person, but I also learned that my story is unique in many ways and not unique in other ways. That when you talk about abuse and manipulation, it can happen in work, it can happen in relationships with marriages. It's everywhere. And that the whole even learning about the publishing industry, I've learned so much, and I think it's made me grow as a human. I think it's made me more aware. I mean, I also think that, as we evolve, we learn more about ourselves than we ever imagined. And that's a lifelong process, I think. I think it's a lifelong process.
That's very true. And just to switch gears a little bit, you have your personal chef business on the side. I love the name of your business, The Seasoned Sage, because
a little double entendre there.
That's exactly what I was getting from that. So I guess you're working on a couple of cookbooks. And with your background, are these going to be cookbooks that include recipes and maybe a few stories from life that go along with the recipes? Is that what you have planned there?
Two different projects. Mm-hmm. One is a cookbook with a tarot deck, which you would pull a card and you get a reading, and then you would be guided to the cookbook to make something for yourself that relates to the card and what's happening in the moment. And then the other book, which I've just finished a book proposal and need to hone in on, that is, my life as a private chef. And those will be where the deeper stories will be, from, New York to Florida, where I was one of their cooks for a long time. I would cook for anywhere from 150 to 500 people in a clip, and where I honed my vegetarian self, and then coming here and starting the business here. So it kind of travels between all of those places that I've done. It'll be memoir-esque with recipes as well and stories. So
Well,
yeah, exciting.
the idea of a cookbook and everything, of course, is it gives you control over the ingredients. You are the creator, like your memoir. You are the creator of what goes into it, so it gives you a semblance of control until you release it out to the world, and then it takes its own ride. For instance, your current book won an award.
Yes, it did.
Where did that come from, and what is the award? Do a little bragging here. You earned this. Use it. Wear it.
Bragger. It is I won the National Indie Excellence Award in the category of autobiography. And yeah, they which is really it was unexpected in every way, for me. And apparently I had a colleague call me to say congratulations, and I was like, "What are you talking about?" And she was like, "I won an award." I had no idea. So it turned out my literary PR company somehow hadn't quite given me the memo, but there you go. We unfolded and found the award, and so yeah, so it's exciting, and I hope that it's just a platform for creating connection, and I had somebody message me on Facebook from a job I had. The first job I moved to from New York to Florida, and I worked in her husband's. It was like a golf resort. I was the manager of one of the restaurants there, and she wrote to me and said, I'm reading your book." And I was like, "Well, awesome." And so, it's just these connections from like your past and your future. I've
Mhm.
it's been amazing. So
Yeah, but you still probably have that moment. It's like, okay, buy my book, but for God's sakes, don't read my book.
my dear friend Karen Terry, she runs an open mic here in
Oh, we've
Truckee.
had her on our podcast.
Right. And I don't know, we had a whole bunch of people and everybody was writing about romance and love and so, I wrote a chapter out of my book which was about some of the escapades that happened. I was in a celibate teaching, but I wasn't very good. So I was quite the blushing excerpt from the book that I read. But yeah, you're at a dinner party and somebody says some of your scenes made me blush, and I was like, why? And then, and then I'm like, okay, well, that was part of the story. Yeah, it's fun. There's a romance novel in here somewhere,
Well, that's part of life, right? Everybody has a romance somewhere in their life.
or several.
So you won an Indie Excellence Award. Does this mean that you independently published this book? And I saw something you have
Yeah.
the book available through Simon and Schuster.
So I'm a hybrid published author with She Writes Press,
Mm-hmm.
and Brooke Warner's the publisher, and she's just a force to be reckoned with. And the distribution comes through Simon and Schuster, which is
Okay.
really solid. It definitely helps. And it's interesting that you publish this book, and now you have to be a marketer and a bookseller, and I have other things.
Mhm.
You don't want to sit there and hawk people to buy your book, but you want people to buy your book. I'd love to see the first run and start and do a second run. And then maybe I'll put that sticker on it. But anyway, yeah, so it's and I feel for me it's important to support those emerging indie authors. I am
Mm-hmm.
really really devoted and to that. It matters to me because, all the big authors and the big five, they've got all that power behind them. How do you shine the light on authors that write really good books? And so that's exciting. And it's taken me to, I mean, my fall is going to be crazy with lots of book festivals. I'm going to New York, I'm going to Chicago, I'm going to Bend, Oregon. It's just been like a whirlwind, and I'm going to, walk the journey. I'm
And
having
we're
fun.
going to talk about one of those festivals here after we do these questions. So let's not forget
Okay.
that. Let's not forget that. But what we're going to do is we're going to slide over to Act Two, and what it is where we share questions with the writers that we interview that are based on James Lipton's Inside the Actor's Studio. For fans of his show, remember that he would ask actors a set of questions to get some various responses, and these are fun. The purpose of this is so potential readers and readers maybe get an opportunity to make another connection with you. So
Mm-hmm.
let's dive into these, and this one's going to be kind of fun. What was your quote unquote I am a real honest to goodness writer moment?
I think that happened when I opened the first the PDF manuscript. I was like, I started to cry. I mean, I called my publisher and I'm like, holy shit. I I was like, this is happening, right? It was a big moment, and then the second big moment was when the books arrived at my doorstep, and I had done I did a video and a reel when the poor UPS guy was like, "What is going on?" As they, dropped 10 cases of books on my doorstep, and those are it was So I think those moments were like just where the heart opened and I was like, "Oh, this is really happening." And then my book launch, which was in Truckee at Alibi Ale, there must have been 200 people there. I was overwhelmed. I was
Wow.
overwhelmed. And Karen Terry was we did an author conversation and she moderated it. And they started chanting my name. And I'm
Oh,
like, well, this is very culty. But it was a moment where I looked out and thought, wow, this is a big deal.
Yeah.
And yet I still want to remain humble as I can. And, and again, I just go back to I want to be of help and service to other authors and writers and creatives. It matters to me. So those were some of the moments.
And
so,
congratulations on that.
yes.
Wow, what a launch.
Yeah, thank you.
So it sounds like you could be a role model to many people, but who is your writing role model and why?
Who is my writing role model? Well, I love Patti Smith. I love all her memoirs. She's been someone who I've read all of her books, and I love her writing style. It's poetry and prose and this marriage of beauty and she's somebody who definitely bleeds on the page. My dear friend and colleague Bridie is a force of nature. She has written a memoir, and it just her level of trauma in her book just was compelling to me that she could just write the way she wrote. And each person I come in contact with has something to share and something to give me that will open the door to the next part of my life. So I don't know if that quite answers it, but Bridie's book is Bright Eyes, a memoir, and it's a very, very well done book.
No, that's excellent. That's excellent. So here's a fun question. What do you love about writing?
What do I love about writing? I think it's like a meditation. I think it just takes me inward and allows me to express myself in a way that you don't necessarily always, or in a way you're not always able to in words, like verbally.
Mm-hmm.
And Hawaii is my happy place where I feel like I write really well. And sit and overlook the bay, the Kalakakua Bay, and write story, and that's it. It just that being in nature. I mean, here in Tahoe, I look at Donner Lake and I spend time writing, and all of that, it informs what I'm doing.
So with all of the beauty of writing, what do you actually dread about it?
Well, you sometimes you hope the muse will be there for you, and sometimes it's not. And when it's not, it is frustrating. It is painful. And, I have 3 sample chapters I need to write. I've got, even write, I write all the time. And some of it's more technical. You're writing descriptions for book festivals. I guess it's finding time, making sure that, time is hard. And I'm not somebody who has a routine, so to speak. Like, I don't get up at 5 o'clock, make my coffee and start writing, or I don't, pour the whiskey at night and start writing. I do it when I feel it. And when you're busy doing a book launch and trying to market your book and running a festival, and now it's summer, so I'm also cooking, sustaining all your creative endeavors. Finding time is really hard. It's the challenge for me.
Okay, so your memoir is one series of significant life experiences after another. That's a kind of a duh statement. But as a writer, is there a single solitary significant life experience that shaped your writing, good or bad? Is there something you can point to here that shaped you as a writer?
I would say, right, the upheaval of leaving was very much a catalyst when I left this teaching and my life fell apart. That was a catalyst. But when I moved to Tahoe and had the opportunity to write for Tahoe Guide, now the publication, it helped me as a writer. It helped me grow. It helped me it helped me finish my book, because all of that was important. I mean, like yourselves, I did hundreds and hundreds of interviews, and that I think also helps your writing, is to really be able to go deep and ask the questions that matter. And I think that those two things have guided me and led me in my process. I'm super excited to start working on the next couple of projects. So, yeah.
Would you recommend the writing life to a loved one, and why or why not?
Ay, yes and no. It's not for the faint of heart. It's hard. It's hard work. And the commitment is deep. It's a deep commitment. And it's fraught with all types of upheaval. But yet here I am, and I love to write. And so I just would say, if you're going to tell your story, be truthful, honest, and open, and know that it's going to be a lot of work. And it's not a simple thing. And the
Yeah.
writing part is the easier part.
Yeah. And we haven't even talked about the marketing thing in depth. So, on that on top of everything else.
On
It's
top of everything else, yes.
yeah.
It's
Okay. So, last one of our set questions. And, have some fun with this because we believe me, we already know a lot about you. But what is something unexpected in your past that we won't see in your memoir? Have some fun with this.
I can't even tell that story. The first story that came into my mind, I'm like, I can't tell that story. It's not in the book. Someone very close to me came up to New York when I was a very young mother and bought an ounce of cocaine for the guru.
Ooh,
One.
boy.
I don't know if we should write that. We should. But it's something that's not in the book, and it's kind of like, holy cow.
Right.
Yeah, I think I think there were the stories of me in New York as a young culinary person, learning the ropes. That yeah, there were some pretty intense stories there too. I feel like all the stories I have are not really ones that I want to talk
Not
about.
safe for work.
Yeah.
Well, the time I got date raped, it was just like out by the chef, It's like really,
Yeah, write all those stories and leave them in a safe deposit box for somebody else to find.
oh my God. Sorry, guys.
No, that's fine. Like I said, we want to have some fun. Okay, so we're winding up here. But before we do that, and before I ask you where we can find your book and find you, we need to plug something very important because, as we said, you're a community leader. We've got the Tahoe Literary Fest. Let's talk about that.
So, I guess it was in 2023. For years I've been chewing on what can we do for the community? What are we going to do for the community? I've been, Catherine Hill and I have like, what do we, we want to do something. We have the community of writers here. We want it to be different than that. They are 50 years in our community of workshopping people's manuscripts. And we came up with a festival, and the Tahoe Literary Festival has grown. This will be our third year, October 9th, 10th, and 11th. We've added a date because we're going to do a half-day writing retreat on the tail end of that. But on the 10th, it's all day workshops, craft talks, generative workshops. We have another author. Her name is Parvati Shallow. She wrote a book. This is a Good Girls Don't Win. She's a reality TV star, and she grew up on the same ashram as I did. So we're going to do an author conversation. Grant Faulkner, he was the executive director of NaNoWriMo and Memoir Nation. He's joining us this year. Suzanne Roberts from South Lake Tahoe, who is a nonfiction writer. Sands Hall, who is she's also was in a cult, so she will be joining us, but writing on scene. And then we've got Lee Herrick, California Poet Laureate, and Sean Griffin, Nevada Poet Laureate, all joining us this year. So people will be able to come and either the people that are passionate about books can come and learn, hear these people read from their books, hear these authors and, read from their books, while writers and aspiring writers and emerging authors can learn from these very adept teachers. So it's really exciting. So that'll be in the fall. And then in the spring, again, we do the Truckee Literary Crawl, which is a free event that people get to come and hear readers in the spring. So it's been really exciting. I've met so many amazing, wonderful people, and I'm really grateful.
And so, okay, and now we get to talk about you again because that was fantastic, and I will do my very best to make sure that I get the web address for the festival into the blog post.
Thank you.
But hold up your book one more time and tell us where we can find your book. Tell us where we can find you on the Information superhighway.
Okay. So the book is available wherever books are sold. Any of the Reno Carson bookstores should carry this. You can go on my website, which is priyahutner.com, and that'll lead you to places to purchase. Word After Word in Truckee has signed copies. And yeah, so I think even Radical Cat, Barnes and Noble, I think there's a new bookstore opening up in Carson. We're going to get the book in there. So yeah, we're everywhere.
That's awesome.
And I'd be grateful to, hear from people after they read the book. I'm happy to help anybody who wants to talk about the publishing journey.
Okay. Just want to remind writers, though, that you don't have to be in a cult to write a book, just so you know. But it helps.
In this case.
Yes.
Okay, so Cece and I want to thank Priya for being along for the ride. This has been a fantastic interview. We've learned so much about your craft. We've learned so much about your experience. And honestly, you're just a spark plug. And I think that you being the community leader, the light of literary light in your community, you're changing people's lives for the better. That's fantastic. Own it.
Thank you. I hope you guys will come to the festival. Be our guest. We'd love to have you,
And that may happen because somebody's releasing a book herself in October, so that may happen too. So, yeah, really, yeah. So again, we want to thank Priya Hutner for being on board with us here on the CC and JT Amateur Hour Production Values Go to Die, where we try to feature local writers and international writers. We've had the privilege of interviewing people from all around the world, from Korea to England to Costa Rica, and now in our own backyard in beautiful Truckee, California. So this is fantastic. We also do a second podcast, which we do focus strictly on Northern Nevada writers, the CRI's literary community, and that's over on twomorebooks.com. But if you want to check out this podcast or the other podcast, go to our website at carsonhume.com. Thank you again, Priya.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It was lovely talking to you guys.
We had fun.
Definitely.
Good.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.